There's a question worth sitting with before we begin. Have you ever given someone everything you had, your time, your energy, your money, your patience, and watched them walk away without a single word of thanks? Have you ever said yes when every part of you was screaming no, and then lain awake that night wondering why you feel so hollow? Have you ever been so reliably kind, so consistently generous, so dependably available, that people stopped seeing it as a gift and started treating it as a given? If the answer is yes, then what follows is for you. Because there is a painful truth that genuinely kind people tend to discover too late. Goodness, without wisdom, does not protect you. It exposes you. And the cruelest part of the whole trap is that when you finally decide to stop, they call you selfish, cold, change. As if the problem was never their taking, but your stopping. Thomas. In a quiet village, there lived a man named Thomas. Thomas was the kind of person people pointed to when they wanted to explain what a good neighbor looked like. He had a warm smile, a ready hand, and a heart that had never learned the word no. Someone needed their roof fixed, Thomas was there. Someone needed money to see them through the month, Thomas gave it. Someone needed to talk for 3 hours about problems that were, frankly, of their own making. Thomas sat and listened every minute of it. Thomas is such a good man, people said. Always there when you need him. Always generous. Thomas heard these things and felt proud. He believed his kindness made him valuable. He believed that being good was a kind of armor, that if he gave enough, helped enough, showed up enough, the world would treat him accordingly. But every night, he collapsed into bed with a bone-deep exhaustion he couldn't quite explain. Not tired in the ordinary way. Tired in the way of someone who has been slowly, quietly drained. He just didn't have the vocabulary for it yet. One morning, his neighbor Mr. Harrison knocked on the door. Thomas had 3 other neighbors' requests behind him that week. His back ached. He had planned, for the first time in months, to simply rest. He looked at Mr. Harrison's face and said yes. He spent the entire day under a burning sun, hands blistering, body protesting every hour. When he finally climbed down from the roof, Mr. Harrison looked up at his work and said, "Good job. Same time next week. The fence needs doing too. No thank you. No offer of help in return. Just the next request, delivered with the casual confidence of a man who has never had reason to expect anything else." That night, staring at the ceiling, Thomas asked himself a question he had been avoiding for years. Why don't they appreciate what I do? Days later, his friend Robert asked to borrow money. 50 coins, he said. Back by next month, he promised. Thomas had heard this before. 3 times before, to be precise. The money had never come back. He gave it anyway. 2 months passed. Robert said nothing. When Thomas finally raised it, gently, carefully, apologetically, as if he were the one doing something wrong, Robert's face shifted into something wounded. What? I thought we were friends. Friends don't keep track of these things. Thomas felt it like a blade turning. He had given and given and given, and somehow, in the accounting of this friendship, he had become the bad person for noticing. At the village meeting about the new well, no one asked Thomas whether he would take on the project. They simply announced it. Thomas will do it. He's always willing. Everyone nodded. The matter was settled. Thomas sat in silence, looking around at the faces of people who had decided, without consulting him, that his time and labor were theirs to allocate. He had a word for it now. His kindness had become his prison. The merchant. That evening, an old merchant passing through the village found Thomas sitting alone by the river. Something in the man's posture, the particular slump of someone who has been slowly hollowed out, made him stop. He sat down beside Thomas without being asked. "You look like a man who gives everything and receives nothing." Thomas looked up, startled. "How did you know?" "Because I recognize it," said the merchant. "You think being good means saying yes to everyone. So tell me, how do you actually feel?" "Exhausted. Empty. Like I'm disappearing." The merchant was quiet for a moment. That's what happens when you give without wisdom. Kindness without discernment isn't kindness. It's self-erosion. You're not helping people, you're training them. You're teaching them that your time has no cost, that your energy has no limit, that your yes means nothing because it never becomes a no. Thomas frowned. But isn't helping people the right thing to do? Yes, said the merchant. But not all people deserve your help. Not all requests deserve your yes. When you help everyone equally, your help becomes worthless, because it costs you nothing to give and therefore costs them nothing to take. When you're always available, people stop valuing your presence. When you never say no, your yes stops meaning anything. He looked at Thomas steadily. Your goodness is real, but you've been spending it like a man who doesn't know it's finite. Protect it. Choose who receives it. Not everyone has earned access to what you have to offer. The first no. The next morning, Mr. Harrison knocked again. Thomas, ready for the fence today? Thomas stood in the doorway. His hands were steady. His voice, when he spoke, was calm. No. My body needs rest. You'll need to find someone else. Mr. Harrison stared at him, as if he'd spoken in a foreign language. What? But you promised. I fixed your roof, your door, your garden fence. You never helped me in return. You never said thank you. You only ever asked for more. I'm not doing the fence. He closed the door gently. His hands were shaking slightly. But underneath the shaking was something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Relief. And beneath the relief, something that might have been the first stirring of self-respect. When Robert came asking for money again, Thomas didn't need to think about it. No. Come on, Thomas. We're friends. You borrowed from me 3 times. You never paid me back. When I asked about it, you made me feel guilty for bringing it up. I won't be lending you money again. Robert's face went through several things in quick succession: surprise, calculation, anger. You've changed, Thomas. You're not the person you used to be. Thomas looked at him for a moment. You're right, he said. I've changed. I'm no longer kind to people who don't respect my kindness. And as Robert walked away, visibly angry, genuinely aggrieved, convinced that Thomas had done something wrong, Thomas noticed something unexpected. He felt lighter than he had in years. Speaking up. At the next village meeting, Thomas stood. His voice was steady. Not angry, steady. I've helped this village for years. I've built and fixed and given without asking for anything in return. I believed that was what a good person did. But I've learned something. Goodness without discernment isn't virtue. It's an open invitation to be used. The room was very quiet. From now on, things will be different. I will help, but not alone. I will give my time, but it must be respected. I will be kind, but only to those who understand what kindness actually is. Some faces in the room looked ashamed. Others looked angry. A few looked like they were running calculations. Thomas found, to his surprise, that he didn't care about any of those reactions. He had said what was true. That was enough. What changed? Something unexpected happened in the weeks that followed. The people who had been taking Thomas for granted began, quietly, to treat him differently. Mr. Harrison nodded respectfully when their paths crossed. Robert greeted him from a distance with something that looked, if not quite like remorse, at least like acknowledgement. The villagers who still asked for help now offered something in return: work, payment, genuine gratitude. The requests didn't stop. But they came differently now. And then a young farmer named Daniel approached him. I heard you're good at building. I need help with my barn. He paused. I'll pay you fairly, and I'll help you with anything you need in return. Thomas looked at him. In Daniel's face he saw something that had been absent from most of his interactions for longer than he could easily recall. Respect. Not the performed appreciation people offer to someone they're about to ask a favor from. Real respect. The kind that comes from seeing another person as an equal rather than a resource. All right, Thomas said. Let's work together. When the old merchant came back through the village months later, he found Thomas by the river again. But everything about him was different. He sat straight. His face was open. The specific hollowness that had been there before was gone. "You've changed," said the merchant. "I have," said Thomas. "I used to think being good meant giving everything to everyone. Now I understand that real goodness requires judgment. It means helping the right people, at the right time, in ways that are actually sustainable. It means recognizing that your energy is finite and that spending it on people who don't value it isn't generosity, it's waste. And how do you feel?" Thomas looked out at the water. "Free," he said. "I'm still kind. But I'm no longer a casualty of my own kindness." What this actually means. If you've been the person who always says yes, the one who helps when exhausted, gives when depleted, shows up even when showing up costs you more than you have, then you already know this story from the inside. You know the specific weight of doing something good while resenting the fact that you felt you had no choice. You know the shame of noticing that the generosity you're so proud of has started to feel like a compulsion rather than a choice. You know what it's like to set a boundary and immediately absorb the blame that comes back at you for it. Here is what I want you to hear. Your kindness is not the problem. Your kindness is real and valuable and worth protecting precisely because it is real. The problem is the absence of discernment, the inability or unwillingness to distinguish between people who receive your generosity with genuine appreciation and people who simply consume it. Not everyone deserves equal access to what you have to offer. That is not a cold or selfish statement. It is a simple, protective truth that every genuinely kind person needs to eventually learn. Saying no is not cruelty. It is the thing that makes your yes mean something. Setting a boundary is not selfishness. It is the thing that makes genuine generosity sustainable. Choosing who receives your kindness is not coldness. It is wisdom, the specific wisdom of someone who has learned that their goodness is not infinite, and that spending it on those who take without gratitude is a waste that ultimately leaves everyone poorer. One person who receives your kindness with genuine appreciation is worth more than 100 who absorb it without noticing. You are not selfish for protecting your energy. You are not cold for saying no. You are not changed for establishing limit. You are, finally, being strategic about something that matters. And strategic kindness, the kind that chooses its moments, protects its source, and gives fully to those who truly deserve it, is not less than unconditional kindness. It is more. It is rarer. And it is the only kind that lasts.